from the book of James, chapter 1, verses 2 to 8. My brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing. If any of you is lacking in wisdom, ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and it will be given you. But ask in faith, never doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For the doubter, being double-minded and unstable in every way, must not expect to receive anything from the Lord.
Hear the gospel according to our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. Again, Jesus began to teach beside the sea. Such a large crowd had gathered around him that he got into a boat on the sea and sat there, while the whole crowd was beside the sea on the land. He began to teach them many things in parables, and in his teaching he said to them, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell upon the path. The birds came and ate it up. Other seed fell on rocky ground, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly, but since it had no depth of soil, when the sun rose, it was scorched, since it had no root, and it withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no grain. Other seed fell into good soil and brought forth grain, growing up and increasing, and yielding 30 and 60 and 100-fold. And he said, let anyone with ears to hear listen." Well, as you may remember from last week, if you were here last week, we started looking at the Wizard of Oz and as relation to the journey of our faith. And of course, as we know, the beginning of the journey starts off all jolly and smiley, and Dorothy sets off to the Emerald City on the yellow brick road. But it's not long before Dorothy comes to a crossroads, and there she has to make a decision or a choice. And when she meets Scarecrow, well, the Scarecrow's able to, well, I suppose you could say, provide some vague options and choices in which way to go, but not with any sort of seeming depth to some of the options that he provides for her. But we also face this in life, don't we? We face different decisions and choices in life. We face life decisions and life choices. Do we go left? Do we go right? Do we carry on? Or even, do we go back from where we came? And it's the same with our life choices in relation to our journey of faith as well. Well, Jesus did give us one warning, and that was this. He did say when people said, I want to come and follow you, but before I come and follow you, is it okay if I go off and do X, Y, and Z first? And he said to them, look, anyone who puts their hand to the plough and looks over the shoulder isn't fit for the kingdom of heaven. And I guess what he meant by that was, and I'm sure we've seen programs where people go back in the old days and they're ploughing by hand, because you know that if you're looking behind you when you're going forward, the furrow that you're ploughing might end up a bit wonky. And the last thing you want is wonky furrows. You want them straight. So Jesus said, you don't want to sort of start a journey of faith and then start looking back over your shoulder from where you've come from. Now, sometimes going back seems like a safe option. It seems like it's a place we're familiar with. It seems colourful. It seems happy. It seems like the Munchkin land from last week, if you like. But we need to heed Jesus' words about starting on a journey of faith, but then looking back and thinking, wouldn't it be nice to be back where we were? But regarding those choices that come our way, regarding those decisions that we have to make, how does our faith, and how should our faith influence those decisions as we face life circumstances and life situations? How do we know in relation to faith how to make the right decisions, and on what faith basis, if at all, do we make those decisions? Well, in the parable that I read just a few moments ago, Jesus puts forward various scenarios as to what can happen in relation to people who are on a journey of faith, who begin on that journey, as it were, as we said last week, put their toe on the end of the yellow brick road and begin to walk forward. And he said, some people receive this message of good news, of God's love and God's forgiveness and God's healing, and then all of a sudden, a challenge comes along and we have a decision to make in relation to what we do in the face of it, just in life, as it were. And what he said is that for some people, they receive that message, but as soon as that first challenge comes and a difficult decision comes along, they give up. Because it's too much hassle. It's too difficult. And they've not worked on securing any roots or developing any roots that will secure them in their faith. And for them, that's the end of the journey. For some, he said, it's like a fleeting fancy. And what was sown in their hearts and what they received in their hearts was quickly snatched away. Again, they never really engaged with it. They never nurtured it or helped it to develop. And as soon as, again, a difficult decision or choice comes up, a crossroads in life, they dismiss their faith all too easily, and it's gone. For some, they have a good go. They sort of get along on the journey and seem to be doing okay, but all of a sudden, the next best thing turns up. The next thing that looks good or looks like a better option that takes their fancy, that comes along. And again, the Christian bit gets choked up among all the other things that influence their lives. But then he says there's some who receive it, the good news, they embrace it, they engage with it, it begins to flourish in their lives and develop and grow exponentially in some respects. And in the light of the words that Richard read to us a few moments ago from James, these are the people who will fare the best when a crossroads comes in life where we find ourselves having to make some decision and do so in relation to their faith. Because James, in that letter, prepares us for the reality of life and the reality of faith in the light of it as well. So if you want to grab hold of your sheets just for a moment, the very first verse that James says is this: brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy. Now, first of all, he doesn't say that if you become a Christian, then all of a sudden what you will get is some sort of spiritual Teflon coating, so that things will not come your way, it'll just slide past you and not even touch the sides. No, he says, ladies and gentlemen, prepare for trials in life. However, there will be things that will happen as a result of them, but there will be trials in life. So he doesn't say that it's going to kind of like, give us this sort of super spiritual Teflon slide-off coating so trials don't come in our direction, difficulties don't come our way, because as all of us know, they do. They do, and they can do, sometimes on a regular basis. What he does say is that in the face of these trials, your Christian faith can help you to make the decisions that will take you through and help you to go the right way and know which path to follow in the light of it. So it goes on. Our faith, he says, there'll be trials that will come our way. In verse 3 it says, because you know that the testing of your faith will produce endurance. Our faith will be tested. However, if we have been like those people where the seed of the good news lands in good soil, and it's been nurtured, it's been cared for, it's been looked after, then the testing of our faith will produce good things in our lives. And that's, if you like, why our bishop and the leadership team in the diocese are encouraging us to engage with the rule of life that we've talked about. And particularly in this situation, the inward journey of that rule of life. And you may be able to remember the things that I've recited so many times, that the inward journey is about prayer, it's about reading of the scriptures, and it's about learning together. And by engaging in those things, by developing our prayer life, our devotional life in that way, however we do it, whether it's in silence or whether it's by using set prayers or whether it's by lighting a candle and having a few moments, whatever we do in prayer, growing and developing our relationship with God in that way will be part of our growth. By engaging with the scriptures and learning more from the Bible and what it can mean for us, just spending again a little bit each day somewhere along the line reading something out of the Bible. This will help us to secure that foundation when the trials, when the tests, when the decisions, when the crossroads, when we're faced with those in life. And of course, the pray, read, and learn. The learning is the learning together. Coming together to share with each other, maybe we have a group. And actually, it's in the notice sheet. It'll sort of meet this Thursday. It says the fellowship group meets on Thursday. And they come together. They just have a social time, but they'll maybe look at a little bit of the Bible and discuss it together and ask questions about it and learn from each other's experiences. And by doing these things, then we will develop in ourselves endurance, because these things help us for the long haul of life and the journey of faith. It'll help us to build up our knowledge, our insights, our wisdom, and help us to make informed, God-centered choices in life and for life when these circumstances come up. Now, you might remember from last week that I shared with you about what happened to me as a when I first made a Christian commitment and discovering that actually smashing the phone up against the wall when something comes up at work that did, not long after I'd made that Christian commitment, that smashing that phone against the wall, it didn't actually break, but it did bounce, was not a good thing to do. That was something I learned. But also, around that time, when I first made that commitment, I was invited to go and join a youth group. Now, I was 20 years old, so it was a group for people of my kind of age. So I went along to this group, and I met this couple, Rob and Marilyn, who to me at 20 years old looked like an old couple. They were probably about 28 in reality, because they've got two very, very young kids at the time. And I went to this group on a weekly basis in their house, and we just, we had a brews, and we sort of sat and chatted for a bit. Then we'd sort of look at a passage from the Bible, and Rob would give some input, or Marilyn would, and then we'd discuss it afterwards. We'd ask some questions about it, and we'd learn from each other's experiences, because there were people there that, contemporaries of mine from school days, who were a bit more mature in the Christian faith, and they helped me. But also, if I faced stuff in life that was going on, I was able to either go to those guys or go to Rob and Marilyn and say, so how does this work? What do you do when this sort of thing comes up? And they, they helped me. And that foundation, I would say, even though I'd been to Bible college after that and then went on to train at a vicar factory and theological college for the job that I'm doing now, the foundation I got in that group at that point in time has stood me in good stead and still does now. The lessons that I learned back then became a wonderful foundation even for now. And so I'd encourage you, we've got one fellowship group at the moment. I don't care if we needed 2 or 3 or 4, because people want to engage more and grow together more in that way. It takes place in an afternoon, so for many people it's accessible in that respect. Even in winter, it's not in the dark at night time or anything. And I would be very interested to point you in that direction if you were interested in engaging with that particular group. Because from those sort of places, Hopefully you won't just get the sort of vague, oh, well, it's very nice down that way, or it could be okay going that way, but I'm not sure about that way. I mean, you know, the vague scarecrow thing. It helps us to grow together and to learn together, and you're never too old to do that. Finally, and this is where the words that I'm saying and the growing together, the prayer, the reading, the learning comes together, because right towards the end of that little passage from James, he says this in verse 6, as it is. But ask these things in faith, never doubting, for the one who doubts is like the wave of the sea, driven and tossed about by the wind. For the doubter, being double-minded, is unstable in every way. God does not want us to be like people who in our faith are thrown about all over the place like a boat in the wind on the sea because we're not sure. God wants us to have that sense of security and foundation and put building blocks in place to help us to grow, to develop, and to nurture our faith. So, I encourage you to consider, to think about, first of all, again, during this Epiphany, as God reveals more to us about ourselves and himself, if we're open to that happening, be challenged once again about our own prayer lives, about reading the scriptures and learning from them, and meeting together in smaller group contexts, in outside of this place, in people's homes, which is where the fellowship happens. It moves to a couple of people's different homes. That's where they hold them. To actually engage with these things so that when life throws all sorts at you, as it does, we may find ourselves in a more secure place and be able to make better and more informed decisions from a faith perspective alongside everything else.